USS Somerset. My name is FC3 Penrose. Today we're doing our Black History Month celebration with Mr. Clovis Honoré, the president of the NAACP. First things first, a little bit about Black History Month and what it means to me. It's very important to me that Black History Month is just talked about, just because Black History Month is important to me. Sort of simple fact. I grew up black. I've seen a lot of things, and I definitely love culture, and that's exactly why I joined the Multicultural Diversity Committee. Just talk about culture here with everyone today and every day. It's very important to me as a person. First thing we're going to do is start with our chaplain. He's got an invocation for us today. Thank you.
For those willing to join, let us pray. Holy God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the time now to celebrate the contributions of our African American brothers and sisters, those in the civilian sector as well as those in uniform. We thank you for our guest speaker today, and we pray that our awareness and admiration extends beyond this one-hour ceremony. Help us to foster appreciation and respect in our everyday interactions and relationships. It's in your holy name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. We really appreciate that. And now our commanding officer, Captain Stuart L. Lattershansky, will introduce our guest speaker.
All right, thank you. So if you've heard me talk a couple times, and everybody in here has, a couple things. One of them is I hate talking. The other is that any and every opportunity I have to get somebody else in who can better exemplify, better portray what it is we want to talk about, I'm going to bring those people over and let them do the talking. And that's what I intend to do today. This makes a great follow-on to the words read we had the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration last month. And what did we say when we talked about race? That sometimes you don't need anything special, you just have to turn around and talk to somebody. And today, we have a very significant and distinguished somebody to talk to us, Mr. Clovis Honoré. He grew up in South Central Los Angeles. He attended San Diego State University. He was with the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and twice was the Black Student Council president. He's been active throughout the San Diego community, both in word, in job, in action, and in giving back ever since. Among the many things he's been involved in and continues to be involved in, and even this list is in no way complete. He's been active with United African American Ministerial Action Council. He's still very much a practicing associate minister. He's active with the nonprofit called the Grid Alternatives, where they go out and they install solar power onto low-income homes. He's active with the San Diego Area Congregations for Change. And, perhaps most notably, he is the current reigning president of the San Diego chapter of the NAACP. What else can I say? Mr. Honoré, please come to the microphone and throw it for a second.
Good morning. How many of you have ever heard somebody read your bio out loud? You weren't expecting it. Yeah. Reigning president? Fortunately, one of the things we don't have in the United States of America are kings and queens. I'm just the president. Again, my name is Clovis Honoré. I am the current president of the San Diego branch of the NAACP. Everybody know what the NAACP is? It's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, founded in 1909. This branch here in San Diego was actually founded in 1990. This is our 100-year anniversary. I want to thank Brother Penrose, Commanding Officer Captain Lattershansky. Did I say that correctly? Getting there. With the last name like Honoré, get some of these other ones right. The XO, Douglas Brady. and the committee for inviting us out. This is a bit impromptu for me. I didn't have a real strong idea of what I wanted to have a conversation with you about. When I got the invitation, there were a lot of invitations, and I had to kind of throw something together. But I think you might find it somewhat interesting. How many of you are human beings? Okay to raise your hand high if I ask the question and say they're right. So how many of y'all are human beings? How many of y'all are Africans? See, so the same hands should have gone up, because African history is human history. So this is Black History Month in the United States of America. It started off back in the 1920s, I think it was, at Negro History Week. Carter D. Woodson created that. He's a historian. I'm not a historian. My degree is in political science, but my minor is in Africana studies. What I decided I would do is go through a couple of the books in my library. My library has over 1,000 books that are left. Probably gave 1,000 away back to Goodwill, because you can only read so many books in a year, right? And kind of walk you through African history up to the present. Why do we do a Black History Month? We do a Black History Month and Negro History Week because over the centuries, there have been some mistakes making in the way we've attempted to approach the existence of Africans or African Americans on this continent. There has been a narrative created that's not always accurate. And so we do this so that we can correct some of that narrative. Just like with the raising of hand at the beginning, right? Everyone in this room is a descendant of somebody from Africa. Because everyone on the planet is a descendant of someone from Africa. So it's going to be kind of interesting. I don't want to hold you too long. I know you're standing, and most of you cannot see these books up here, but I'm going to bring some of them up and hold them up for you. But I want to start with the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. Anybody ever read the Bible? And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness upon the face of the earth, and the spirit, etc., etc. Then at some point it says, and God said, let us make man in our image. Now, I apologize for the patriarchal disposition of the writers of the Jewish Bible. Let's make humans in our image. And it says that God took the soil of the earth and created the first human being. And in the Bible, the first man is called Adam, the first woman is called Eve. Now, if you look at this from a pseudo-scientific point of view, which I'll do today, God created a single individual and then split that individual in two so that he could have a male and a female. Then we can look at genetics and trace back all the way back to the first human beings. Now, there's a lady named Lucy that some scientists found. It's approximately 3 million years old. It's supposed to be your first mom. As far as we can find out, that's the oldest human remains we've ever found. 3 million years old. Those remains were found in Africa. And if we trace back our genetics, we find that all those go back to a single pair of people. Could it be that same pair of people that God created in the garden? If so, those two people were Black Africans. Because there's been this narrative created that we need to correct. And if there are groups of people who have not been given their due, any group of people that's not been given their due, understanding and knowing who those people are, where they came from, and how they relate to you, helps us bring those people back into a place of respect and honor in our own cultural perspective. So let me share some stuff with you. Now, we talk about the Bible, and this book is called The Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt. And we've been told that there are many gods in the many traditional cultures. For instance, the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic or African cultures, traditional Native, so-called Native American cultures, and other cultures around the world are called polytheists. But if you ever actually study the religion of the peoples of Africa, where they originated, you'll find that there's only one God in that religion. But just as the gods of all religions manifest in many different ways, shapes, forms, and fashions, the ancient Kemetics gave names and identified the traits and characteristics of those manifestations of that one God. And when we gave them a bunch of different names, we actually called them Neter, would be God, or Neteru, or plural gods. But when you translate that into English, you don't have a word for Neter. You don't have a word for Neter. So we use the English word God. And when we have many of them, we say gods. But that does not mean that this is a polytheistic organization or culture that says we have many gods like the one God that we find in that Bible we just talked about. There's that same one God. All these cultures say there's that same one God, but that God manifested in different ways. So I understand the Eskimos have something like 10 or 12 words for water. Because there's liquid water, there's ice, there's sleet, there's slush, there's snow, right? All these different manifestations. And if you live in that culture, if you live in that environment, you need to know the difference. And so we come up with words that identify those differences. Same thing for the ancient Egyptian culture, ancient Kemetic culture. I'm using those terms interchangeably because some of us understand it as ancient Egyptian culture, but the name of our own culture from the history is Kemet. That's what we called ourselves back then. And so we need to understand also that when we have, we talk about differences a little too much. We need to, I think, concentrate a little bit more on the similarities. So, here's part of my African collection, my ancient African collection. And I'll just give you some titles. And if you get a chance, you can go look some of these up. So this one, The Complete Gods and Goddesses. This book is called the Metu Neter. What we call ancient hieroglyphics, or what the Greeks call hieroglyphics, the actual language is Metu. That's the name of the language. For instance, in Spanish, the language Spanish is not Spanish, it's Spanish. It's Espanol, right? So the language of the ancient Egyptians is Medu. And this term, Metu Neter, Neter again being God, the language of the gods, the hieroglyphs, even in Egyptian, even in Greek, who gave us that name, mean the sacred writings. And this is a treatise that talks about how these gods and goddesses were understood by those ancient cultures. This particular book, called Philosophy Podium, was written by a gentleman who is a Dogon priest. You guys know what a Dogon priest is? The Dogons, I'll let you look up and do more research on them, but this gentleman traces his lineage all the way back to these ancient Egyptians and those priesthoods. And he actually can trace it, just like in the Bible we have the genealogies, and so on, we got so on, we got so on, and King James. This gentleman traces his lineage all the way back to these Africans, these ancient Egyptians, these Kemetic priests, who gave us an understanding of those ancient Egyptian cultures. And most of you are familiar with this the Egyptian book of David, right? Or the actual translation is the book of Going Forth by Day. And it talks about the cosmology or cosmogony of these same ancient people. You'll find it very similar to what you may have learned from your parents or from your pastor or from your priest. This is my actual favorite version. Here's another book called The Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization. And it traces all the sciences, all the technology, all the history, all the art, all the things that came out of Africa that we regularly identify with someone else. There's a passage in here in the introduction I think you might find interesting. If I can remember where it is. The civilization of Egypt and of Africa in general is the most written about and least understood of all known subjects. This is not an accident or an error in misunderstanding the available information. Except for Egypt, African people have been programmed out of the respectable commentary of history. Europeans have claimed the non-African creation of Egypt in order to downgrade the position of African people in world history. They have laid the foundation of what they call Western civilization on a structure that the Western mind did not create. In doing so, they have used no logic. And this goes on, and these books go on to talk about how a lot of what we recognize as Western civilization is an appropriation of African civilization. So if you like the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the religion you practice, the language you speak, the music that you listen to, the dances that you do, if they're relevant to you today in your current culture, you need to understand and appreciate that almost all of that will translate back to an African culture. And so why are we here on Black History Month? Why do we have a Black History Month? So that we can understand and appreciate who we are based on our own history. That everyone in this room are family members. Not just because you're on the same ship or boat. Like I said, I don't know nothing about the military, so I don't know what the right term is. But because you actually are family, if you look at yourselves historically. One of my favorite books is called Stolen Legacy, and this actually walks you through what you consider. So you have to think of, let me digress. You have to think of Western civilization, right? You're familiar that you are all members of Western, all of you here now are members of Western civilization. Right? Western civilization is a derivative of European civilization. It is a derivative of Roman civilization, which is a derivative of amalgamation of Greek and what we call Etruscan civilization, which is a borrowing from African civilization. So even if you look at the gods of the Greeks and the gods of the Romans, they are a derivative of the ancient African gods. The seminal book that I report to most folks to whenever they ask me a question, they just do it in passing. We might have a chance to do some of that before I go. It's a book called Destruction of Black Civilization by a gentleman named Chancellor Williams. And he takes all this information and he compiles it. He was actually doing a PhD thesis, and this was about half of it. When someone said you have to publish this information. And it talks about how, starting with that Nile Valley civilization, tens of thousands of years ago, where the pyramids were built, where the temples are, where mathematics came from, where science came from, where archaeology came from, where astronomy came from, there were repeated attacks on the ancestors in the Nile Valley by our children who had left and under diverse circumstances became independent of their parents and then realized that the cradle of civilization was still in the Nile Valley and wanted to come back. But they didn't want to come back as children, they didn't want to come back as students, they didn't want to come back and come under the pharaohs. They wanted to come back and conquer. So there's wave upon wave of attacks on the African culture, and that moves us from the Nile Valley to the west and south. So the next phase of African civilization is the first diaspora or dispersion. All human life started in the Nile Valley, but because of what happened in the Nile Valley and the wave of attack, Africans were forced to move across the continent, not to mention moving around the world to make everybody else live on the planet. And so the next phase of African existence, the next phase is Western Africa. Right? So you see movement from the Nile Valley into the West Africa. And if you want to know and understand, again, the next phase of what it means to be African, how you became who you are, where you came from, and where we're going, you need to understand Western Africa. So in Antigua society, a lot of the symbols you see, especially a lot of the symbols, how many of y'all saw Black Panther? A lot of the symbols you saw in there came from the Antigua culture. Did you know that? So it's good to know these kind of things, because each of these symbols has a meaning. The one on the front is the Sankofa, which means looking back and go forward. It basically states that it is not a bad thing to take a look at your history to understand where you're likely to be going in the future. And so I got a pile of books about Africa. This is one of my favorites. It's called Things Fall Apart. And it tells a story of a man named Okonkwo. And Okonkwo was a man of stature in his village in Western Africa. Then the Europeans started coming to Western Africa, and they took the children, and they retrained the children to think like Europeans, not like the culture that they came from. Then they empowered the children by making them guards over their parents. And the title of the book is Things Fall Apart, because it identifies how African culture started to disintegrate on the Western culture when colonialism came. And so again, why do we do Black History Month? It is to reorganize the way we think about people so that we can have a greater appreciation for who they are and where we are and where we're going. They came before Columbus. So we started in the Nile Valley, we moved to West Africa. We were about to cross the Atlantic Ocean and come to these continents. But tens of thousands of years, that's tens of thousands of years before Europeans landed in 1492, Africans were already here. Many of you might recognize that symbol on the front, Olmec head. We know these Olmecs were here thousands of years before the Europeans showed up. So Africans were around the globe, even before Europeans started building boats. Everybody's familiar with the slave. That's how the vast majority of Africans got to the United States of what's now known as the United States of America. Does anyone know the date that is the year that is credited with the first slaves or the first Africans being enslaved or the first Africans who would become slaves coming to the United States of America? Bless you. 1619. And what year is this? 1492. 400 years. Who's a Bible scholar? Any parallels? Something to think about. It's an interesting parallel. 400 years. This year marks 400 years of Africans on this continent under the colonial reign. Not those that came thousands of years before, but under the colonial reign. And the Bible has an interesting story about some Jewish folk who were in Egypt for 400 years. And all y'all know that story, right? If you don't know the story, ask your shipmates, they know the story that we have to share. We come to the United States. I'm about to wrap this up. And there are some folks here already. Now what's interesting, if you look at these folks, it says black Indians. And if you look at the pictures, you'll notice that these Indians look very African. But these African-looking Indians were here before the Europeans got here. Again, they came before Columbus. And there's some controversies going on right now in the United States Congress about folks who identify themselves as, we call them so-called Native Americans, but if they were here before they was an American, they can't be Native Americans, right? They have to be the native. They're native before they was an American. And it's it's a recognition of the presence and activity of Africans. Now there's a lot more, but I don't want to hold you because I know there's some questions that folks want to ask. So I'm going to do my little political speech. I hope Steve will not hit me in the back of the head as we drive out of here. I'm going to do my little political speech. Now there's a conversation about equality and equity. There's a difference. And there's actually a thing called parity as well. Equality means everybody gets the same. Equity is a little different, and I'll share this with you in something of a little bit of story. Well, just the statistics that Steve and I still need to hammer out. San Diego County is a county of a little over 3 million people. It's about 150,000 African Americans or black people in San Diego County, which comes about 5%. The GDP, or gross domestic product, of the county of San Diego is a little over $200 billion. The GDP of African Americans or blacks in San Diego is 1%, $2 billion. So 1% versus 5%. 1% versus 5%. So why is it that a population of people who've been in this country for 400 years doesn't have 5% of GDP? $10 billion. If you ever look at the black community in San Diego and black communities around it, as I said, I came from South Central Los Angeles, where when I'm introducing myself, I say I come from South Central Los Angeles in 1978, where we were in the process of perfecting the drive-by shooting. And that's what was going on about the very block I lived on. I watched those kind of things happen. If you look at black communities around the United States of America, you ask the question, why is it that we can be 5% of the population, only 1% of GDP? And that's because of a lot of the history that I shared with you, but it's also about a lot of the history I have not shared with you. 250 years of enslavement. 100 years of Jim Crow. So 50 to 60 years ago, the African American military personnel in this room would not be able to get a GI with the rest of them. So how do you buy a house when you can't get a loan? You can't get an education. You can't get a good job, even though you served in the military. And I'm going to get emotional about this in a minute. So you buy a house, the house grows in value, you put away some money, and you pass on wealth to the next generation. And they buy a house, the San Diego house is what, $600,000? Like, you own a house at $600,000 in San Diego, you sell that and you move to Mississippi. You're retired. I don't care if you're 20 years old. Right? That's how much that money will, how far the money will take you in Mississippi. So here we have 2019, 400 years later, and Africans in San Diego, 1% of the GDP. So what would it take to make equality? Well, African GDP would have to go from $2 billion to $10 billion. That's just equality. But what would it take to make equity? Well, that's actually $10 billion. GDP is gross domestic product per year. So that's $10 billion for 2019. What about the $8 billion we missed in 2018? What about the $8 billion we missed in 2017, 2016, 2000, 1900? So equity would mean, how do we bring everything up to equality with respect to history? Parity is a whole other thing. Because parity is, how do we keep this going the way it is going so that that equality and that equity stays? I don't know, did any of you own a house or have parents own homes in 2005, 6, 7, 8? Don't raise your hands on the next one. How many of them lost their homes in the market crash, economy crash, lost jobs, lost homes? Well, a disproportionate number of those people were African American, because African Americans have been targeted for the balloon payment loans and for these other loans where the interest rate would go up very high. And so there goes that wealth that had already been acquired. So parity means, how do we make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again? So we have equality, we have equity, we have parity. And we have this history that we want to take into account when we begin to address these questions, these concerns, these issues. And I'm not going to do my emotional thing because I don't need to stand in front of all y'all and do this emotional thing. I might, just a little bit. No, I'm not going to do that. That's too political. So why do we have a Black History Month? Why am I standing in front of you today? Why are you standing there? Some of y'all yelling, but that's okay. Listening to Clovis from the NAACP talk about the history. Because standing next to you, behind you, in front of you, is a descendant of Africa. Standing next to you, in front of you, behind you, is an African. Someone you like, someone you respect, someone you answer to, someone who has a family. How will we, from this day forward, respond to that person? Now that we know and understand a little bit better the history, a teeny bit of the culture, how will we listen better to each other? Regardless of what culture or what ethnicity, the race isn't included anyways. There's only one race, the human race. How will we conduct ourselves individually? It's easy to do something in a group because everybody in the group is doing it, nobody challenges the other people in the group when they're all doing it. But how are we going to conduct ourselves individually with that person behind you, in front of you, next to you? Today, this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, next month, or the stranger in the bank, or the parents of your kids too, or the bank administrator. How are we going to act differently? Now that we have some, I hope, a little better understanding that we're all Africans. We're all humans. And I don't get to do my sermon on love. Well, I'm sure he'll take care of that if you ask him. So I was told to leave some time for some questions. I hope you don't have any. No, I'm just totally kidding. I'm happy to answer any questions I can. But thank you for listening. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for inviting us out. And this is my first time addressing military crowds, so I hope I didn't mess it up too much.